Admiral Marcus Blackwood watched the stars through the massive window of his flagship. The Dominion's Edge was the largest warship ever built, stretching 3 miles from bow to stern. Behind it followed 9,999 other ships, creating a fleet so vast it blocked out entire sections of space. "Sir, we are approaching the target system," announced Captain Elena Morrison from her station. She was one of the best officers in the Imperial Navy, which was why Blackwood had chosen her for this mission. Blackwood turned from the window and walked to the central command platform. Around him, hundreds of crew members worked at their stations, monitoring everything from weapon systems to life support. The bridge was a city unto itself, buzzing with quiet activity. "Show me the planet," he ordered. The main display flickered to life, showing a small blue and green world orbiting a yellow star. It looked peaceful from this distance, with white clouds swirling over vast oceans and brown continents. "Third planet from the star," reported Lieutenant James Crawford, the ship's intelligence officer. "The locals call it Earth. Population approximately 8 billion. They appear to be divided into many small nations that fight among themselves constantly." Blackwood nodded. This was typical for primitive worlds. Most species spent centuries warring with each other before they learned to unite and reach for the stars. Earth was clearly still in its violent childhood. "What about their weapons?" he asked. Crawford pulled up detailed scans on his screen. "Very basic technology, sir. They have nuclear weapons, but nothing that could threaten our ships. Their most advanced spacecraft use chemical rockets that can barely reach their own moon. No energy shields, no plasma weapons, no faster-than-light travel." "Perfect," Blackwood said with satisfaction. The Imperial conquest of Earth would be swift and clean. Over the past century, the Terran Empire had conquered 4 to 7 worlds. Each victory had been easier than the last as their technology improved and their fleet grew larger. Some planets surrendered immediately when they saw the Imperial fleet. Others fought briefly before realizing how hopeless their situation was. None had lasted more than a week. Captain Morrison approached with a data tablet. "Admiral, the fleet is in position at the edge of their solar system. All ships report ready for the invasion." Blackwood took the tablet and reviewed the formation. The Imperial fleet was arranged in perfect attack formation, with the heavy battleships in the center and smaller, faster ships on the flanks. It was a sight that had terrified dozens of worlds into submission. "Any signs that they have detected us?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Crawford replied. "Their primitive monitoring stations have spotted us. We're receiving radio transmissions from across the planet. They seem quite excited about our arrival." Blackwood laughed. "I bet they are. Open a communication channel to the planet. All frequencies." The communications officer, a young woman named Sarah Parker, worked quickly at her station. "Channel open, sir. Broadcasting to the entire planet." Blackwood straightened his uniform and faced the main camera. This was his favorite part of any conquest, the moment when he informed a new world of their fate. "People of Earth," he began, his voice carrying across space to reach every radio and television on the planet below. "I am Admiral Marcus Blackwood of the Terran Imperial Fleet. Your world is now surrounded by 10,000 warships, each one capable of destroying your largest cities." He paused to let this information sink in. On Earth, 8 billion people were probably staring at their screens in shock and terror. "You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally," he continued. "Lay down all weapons, disband your militaries, and prepare to accept Imperial rule. If you comply, your people will be treated fairly as subjects of the Empire. If you resist, we will demonstrate why 4 to 7 other worlds chose to surrender." The transmission ended. Blackwood turned back to his crew, feeling satisfied with another job well done. "Now we wait," he told Captain Morrison. "In my experience, it usually takes about 48 hours for a planet's leaders to argue among themselves before they see reason." But as the hours passed, something strange happened. Instead of the panicked communications they expected, Earth went almost completely silent. The normal chatter of radio and television broadcasts continued, but there were no desperate attempts to contact the Imperial fleet. No pleas for mercy, no offers to negotiate. "Are they ignoring us?" Morrison asked, puzzled. Crawford checked his instruments again. "Sir, I'm detecting some unusual activity on the planet's surface. There are energy readings in several locations that don't match their known technology." "What kind of energy readings?" Blackwood demanded. "I'm not sure, sir. They're very faint, and they don't match anything in our database. It could be some kind of experimental defense system they're trying to activate." Blackwood dismissed this with a wave of his hand. Primitive species always try desperate measures when faced with conquest. Remember the Centauri Republic? They tried to build a massive laser cannon in their final days. It was laughably inadequate. But deep down, something about Earth's silence bothered him. In 47 conquests, he had never encountered a world that simply ignored his surrender demand. Fear, anger, desperation, these were normal responses. Silence was not. Keep monitoring their communications, he ordered. And double our sensor sweeps of the planet. I want to know what they're doing down there. As the Imperial fleet waited in the cold darkness of space, Earth continued its quiet preparations. Whatever the humans were planning, they would learn soon enough that resistance was futile. The Terran Empire had never been defeated, and one primitive world would not be the first to break that record. At least, that was what Admiral Marcus Blackwood believed as he settled in to wait for Earth's inevitable surrender. 24 hours passed in tense silence. Admiral Blackwood paced the bridge of his flagship, growing more irritated with each hour. In all his years of conquest, no world had ever ignored his surrender demand for this long. "Sir," called Lieutenant Crawford from his station. "We're receiving a transmission from Earth." Finally, Blackwood thought. Put it on the main screen. The display showed only darkness, but a clear human voice filled the bridge. The speaker sounded calm, almost bored. "Unknown fleet, you have 24 hours to leave our solar system. This is your only warning." The transmission ended abruptly. The bridge fell silent. Several crew members exchanged confused glances. Captain Morrison was the first to speak. "Sir, did they just threaten us?" Blackwood stared at the empty screen in disbelief. A primitive world with chemical rockets had just given him an ultimatum. Him. The conqueror of 47 star systems. "They are bluffing," he said, but his voice carried less certainty than usual. No species this primitive would dare challenge the Imperial fleet unless they were completely insane. Crawford checked his sensors again. "Admiral, I'm still detecting those strange energy readings from the planet. They're getting stronger." "Stronger how?" "The signals are coming from multiple locations now. Major population centers, mountain ranges, even from beneath their oceans. It's like the entire planet is waking up." Blackwood walked to the main display and stared down at Earth. From this distance, it looked so small and helpless. How could 8 billion primitives pose any threat to his mighty fleet? "They need to learn respect," he declared. "Target their moon." Morrison hesitated. "Sir, their moon? A demonstration of power. We'll carve our mark into their satellite. When they see what our weapons can do, they'll remember their place." The weapons officer, Commander Robert Hayes, began charging the fleet's main guns. "Targeting the lunar surface, Admiral. All ships report weapons ready." "Fire." 10,000 Imperial warships opened fire simultaneously. Brilliant beams of energy lanced across space, converging on Earth's moon like the fingers of an angry god. The lunar surface exploded in a shower of rock and dust, creating a crater visible from Earth's surface. The crew cheered. It was always satisfying to demonstrate Imperial power. "That should get their attention," Blackwood said with satisfaction. "Now they know what happens to worlds that defy the Empire." But Earth's response was not what he expected. Instead of panic or surrender, the planet's strange energy readings suddenly spiked to incredible levels. "Sir!" Crawford shouted, staring at his instruments in alarm. "The energy output from Earth just increased by 1,000%. "That's impossible," Morrison said. "No planet has that much industrial capacity." On the main display, Earth began to change. What had appeared to be normal cities suddenly blazed with light. Massive structures started rising from beneath the planet's surface, shedding dirt and ocean water like giants awakening from a long sleep. "My God," whispered Commander Hayes. "What are those things?" Crawford worked frantically at his station. "Admiral, I'm reading structures the size of continents. Some of them appear to be machines. Incredibly advanced machines." The Pacific Ocean began to drain away as something vast rose from beneath the waves. Water cascaded from its edges in waterfalls that could be seen from space. Other structures emerged from mountain ranges, revealing themselves to be technological marvels disguised as natural formations. "This can't be real," Blackwood said, but his voice shook. "Our intelligence reports showed a primitive civilization. Stone tools and chemical rockets." "Sir," Morrison said quietly, "what if our intelligence was wrong?" Before Blackwood could answer, another transmission came from Earth. This time, the voice belonged to a different human, a woman who sounded almost sad. Imperial fleet, you have made a grave error. We gave you a chance to leave peacefully. Instead, you chose to damage our moon. This was unwise. The transmission continued, and now the woman's voice carried an edge of steel. We are not the primitive species you believe us to be. This world has been our sanctuary for thousands of your years, a place where we could rest and watch the galaxy grow. You have disturbed that rest. Crawford's instruments went wild. Admiral, the energy readings from Earth now exceed our entire fleet's output by 50 times. Impossible. Blackwood snapped, but even as he spoke, he could see the truth on his screens. Earth was not a primitive world. It was something else entirely, something that had been hiding its true nature until this moment. The woman's voice spoke again, now broadcast on every frequency the Imperial fleet could receive. We are the ones your species calls humans, though we are far older than your records suggest. Long ago, we seeded life throughout this galaxy, nurturing young civilizations and teaching them to reach for the stars. When they were ready to stand alone, we withdrew to this quiet corner of space. More structures continued rising from Earth's surface. The planet was transforming before their eyes, revealing itself as a technological marvel beyond their comprehension. You are children playing with weapons you barely understand, the voice continued. And like all children who misbehave, you must be taught a lesson. A single ship rose from Earth's surface, small and silver, moving with impossible grace. It had no visible engines, yet it accelerated toward the Imperial fleet faster than their most advanced fighters. All ships, open fire on that vessel. Blackwood ordered desperately. But their weapons wouldn't lock onto the approaching ship. It moved through space as if the normal laws of physics didn't apply to it. The human ship reached the center of the Imperial formation and simply stopped, hanging motionless among the massive warships like a child's toy among giants. Then it began to glow with soft blue light, and Admiral Marcus Blackwood realized that everything he thought he knew about the universe was about to change. The small silver ship hung motionless in the center of Admiral Blackwood's fleet like a diamond floating in dark water. Despite its tiny size compared to the massive Imperial warships surrounding it, every person on every bridge felt its presence like a weight in their chest. All weapons, focus fire on that ship. Blackwood commanded, his voice tight with desperation. Commander Hayes worked frantically at his weapons station. Sir, our targeting systems won't lock on. The computer says there's nothing there, but we can see it with our own eyes. Use manual targeting then. I'm trying, sir, but it's like the ship exists and doesn't exist at the same time. Our sensors can't get a solid reading. Captain Morrison stared at the silver vessel through the main viewport. Admiral, look at how it moves. No exhaust, no energy signature from engines. How is it even flying? Before Blackwood could answer, a new voice filled the bridge. It belonged to a human male, calm and patient, like a teacher speaking to confused students. I am Captain Thomas Harrison of the Terran Deep Guard. Admiral Blackwood, you and your fleet have made a serious mistake. It's time you understood what you're dealing with. The main screen flickered and changed, showing not the face of the speaker, but images of Earth as it truly was. The planet was transforming completely. Massive cities that had been hidden underground for millennia rose to the surface. Oceans drained away to reveal continent-sized platforms covered with technology beyond imagination. What you see now is Earth's true form, Captain Harrison continued. For thousands of years, we've maintained the illusion of a primitive world. Your species, like many others in this galaxy, needed time to grow and learn without our interference. Lieutenant Crawford's hands shook as he read his instruments. Admiral, the energy output from those structures, it's impossible. A single one of those platforms generates more power than our entire home fleet. The images on the screen changed, showing ancient star charts and recordings of space battles from long ago. Ships that looked similar to the small silver vessel were shown traveling between distant galaxies, their technology making Imperial warships look like crude toys. Long ago, we were explorers, Harrison explained. We traveled this galaxy when most of your species were still learning to make fire. We found worlds full of potential and helped life take root. We taught early civilizations how to reach for the stars, how to build ships, how to communicate across the void. Admiral Blackwood felt his legs grow weak. Everything he believed about human history, about the Empire's place in the galaxy, was crumbling around him. That's impossible, he whispered. Humans are primitives. Our records show you've barely left your home system. Your records show what we wanted you to see, Harrison replied gently. When the younger races we had helped began to mature, we faced a choice. We could rule over them as gods, or we could step back and let them find their own paths. We chose to withdraw. The screen showed images of human ships disappearing from known space, leaving behind only legends and myths on dozens of worlds. Species that had once known humans as teachers gradually forgot the truth, remembering them only in ancient stories. Earth became our sanctuary, a place where we could rest and watch our children grow. We disguised our cities, hid our technology, and pretended to be what you expected us to be. A primitive world, divided and struggling. Captain Morrison stared at the display in shock. Sir, if this is true, then every species in the galaxy. Every intelligent species in this galaxy carries genetic markers we planted, Harrison confirmed. You are all our children in a very real sense. The Centauri, the Vegans, the Andromedans, even your own Terran Empire. We guided your early evolution, helped your ancestors take their first steps toward the stars. The silver ship began to move slowly through the Imperial fleet, passing between massive warships like a fish swimming through a school of whales. As it moved, more impossible things began to happen. Ships that had their weapons trained on the human vessel found their guns turning away on their own. Engines that had been running perfectly for years suddenly refused to start. Communication systems that connected the vast fleet began broadcasting the same message on every frequency. We are disappointed in you, Harrison's voice said, now speaking directly to every person in the Imperial fleet. Of all our children, the Terran Empire has shown the least wisdom. You have conquered 4 to 7 worlds, enslaved billions of people, and spread fear throughout this sector of space. Commander Hayes looked up from his weapons station, his face pale. Admiral, our entire weapons grid just shut down. Not damaged, just turned off. I can't even access the controls. The engines too, sir, reported the engineering officer. Everything's running, but we can't change course or speed. It's like the ship is thinking for itself. Admiral Blackwood grabbed the communications console. This is Admiral Blackwood. I demand you release my ships immediately. The Terran Empire will not be threatened by anyone. Admiral, Harrison replied sadly, you still don't understand. There is no threat here. A parent does not threaten a misbehaving child. They simply correct the behavior. The silver ship reached the exact center of the Imperial formation and stopped. Around it, the massive fleet hung helpless in space, their crews unable to control their own vessels. What you are about to witness, Harrison announced, is not an attack. It is an education. You came here believing you were the superior force, that your technology and numbers made you invincible. It's time you learned the truth about your place in this universe. The small silver ship began to glow brighter, and space itself seemed to bend around it like water around a stone. Admiral Blackwood realized with growing terror that whatever was about to happen would change everything forever. The silver ship at the center of the Imperial fleet pulsed with gentle blue light, growing brighter with each passing second. Admiral Blackwood watched in helpless terror as space itself began to ripple around the small vessel like waves on a disturbed pond. What's happening to our sensors? Captain Morrison asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lieutenant Crawford stared at his instruments in confusion. Everything's going crazy, Captain. The readings don't make sense. It's like space and time are bending around that ship. The blue light from the human vessel spread outward in slow, beautiful waves. Where the light touched the Imperial warships, strange things began to happen. The massive steel hulls started to shimmer and fade, as if they were becoming transparent. Admiral, Commander Hayes called out from his station, I can still see our ships, but the sensors say they're not there anymore. How is that possible? Captain Harrison's calm voice filled every bridge in the fleet simultaneously. What you are experiencing is called dimensional translation. Your ships, your crews, everyone aboard is being moved to a parallel space that exists alongside normal reality. Admiral Blackwood grabbed his communication console with shaking hands. Stop this. You have no right to. We have every right, Harrison interrupted gently. You came to our home with weapons. You fired on our moon. You threatened to destroy cities full of innocent people. Did you think there would be no consequences? The rippling effect spread faster now, reaching ship after ship. As each vessel was touched by the blue waves, it began to fade from normal space. The crews could still see each other, could still communicate, but their ships were no longer fully in the same dimension as the stars around them. This isn't death, Harrison explained, his voice patient like a teacher addressing frightened students. Your people are perfectly safe. They can breathe, eat, sleep, and live normal lives. But they cannot harm anyone else, and they cannot return to normal space without our permission. Captain Morrison watched through the main viewport as a nearby battleship slowly became translucent. She could see its lights, see people moving on the bridge, but it looked like a ghost ship floating in empty space. "How long?" she asked quietly. "How long what, Captain? How long will our people be trapped in this other dimension?" Harrison's voice carried a note of sadness. "That depends entirely on what your empire chooses to do next. This is not punishment, it's education. Your crews will have time to think about their actions, about the pain they've caused across the galaxy." The blue waves reached the outer edges of the Imperial formation. 9,000 ships had already been translated into the parallel dimension. Only a few hundred remained in normal space, including Admiral Blackwood's flagship. "Please," Blackwood said, his pride finally breaking. "My crews had no choice. They were following orders. I'm the one responsible." "We know," Harrison replied. "That's why we're leaving some ships untouched. Someone needs to carry word back to your empire about what happened here." The waves of blue light suddenly stopped spreading. The remaining ships floated in normal space, surrounded by the ghostly outlines of their translated fleet. It was the most terrifying sight Admiral Blackwood had ever witnessed. 9,700 ships, Harrison announced. Roughly 6 million Imperial personnel, all safely relocated to parallel space. "They can see you, Admiral, but they cannot help you or harm us." Through the viewport, Blackwood could see the faded shapes of his massive fleet. Lights blinked on their hulls, people moved on their bridges, but they might as well have been on the other side of the universe. "This demonstration took exactly 37 seconds, Harrison continued. "In that time, we neutralized the largest invasion fleet in your empire's history without killing a single person. Do you understand what this means?" Commander Hayes looked up from his useless weapons console. "It means they could have destroyed us all just as easily." "Precisely," Harrison confirmed. "We could have translated your ships into the heart of a star, or into the cold void between galaxies. We could have simply made you cease to exist. Instead, we chose mercy." The silver ship began to move again, gliding effortlessly through the ghostly remains of the Imperial fleet. As it passed each translated vessel, the blue light around it pulsed gently, like a greeting between old friends. "Your translated crews will remain in parallel space for now," Harrison explained. "They have food, water, air, everything they need to survive. They can even communicate with each other across the dimensional barrier. But they cannot fire weapons, cannot travel faster than light, and cannot threaten any world in this galaxy." Admiral Blackwood slumped in his command chair, feeling older than his 70 years. "What do you want from us?" "We want you to go home, Admiral. Tell your Emperor what happened here. Tell him that the age of Imperial conquest is over. Tell him that humanity has returned to active guardianship of this galaxy." The small silver ship approached Blackwood's flagship, stopping just outside the main viewport. For the first time, they could see into its bridge through a transparent section of the hull. A single human sat at the controls, looking no different from any person they might meet on any Imperial world. "My name is Thomas Harrison," the human said, and now his voice came from right beside them instead of through the communication system. "I've been watching your empire for 50 years, hoping you would choose wisdom over conquest. You disappointed us." Harrison stood up in his ship's bridge and walked to the viewport, looking directly at Admiral Blackwood through the transparent barriers that separated them. "But we still have hope for you," he continued. "Your people are not evil, just misguided. With time and proper guidance, they can learn to be better." The silver ship began to withdraw, moving back toward Earth with the same impossible grace it had shown throughout the encounter. "Go home, Admiral Blackwood. And remember what you've seen here." Admiral Blackwood's flagship limped through space toward Imperial headquarters, carrying news that would shake the galaxy to its core. Behind them, the ghostly outlines of 9,700 translated ships grew fainter until they disappeared completely. Only 300 vessels remained from the largest invasion fleet in Imperial history. The journey home took 2 weeks. During that time, word of what happened at Earth spread like wildfire through every star system, every space station, every world with communication equipment. The story seemed impossible, but the evidence was undeniable. An entire Imperial fleet had simply vanished into another dimension. Captain Morrison stood beside Blackwood on the bridge as they approached the Imperial capital world of New Rome. The planet's orbital defenses, massive space stations bristling with weapons, looked small and fragile after what they had witnessed at Earth. "Sir," she said quietly, "what do we tell the Emperor?" Blackwood stared at the approaching planet with tired eyes. "The truth, Captain. No matter how impossible it sounds." The Imperial Palace was a monument to conquest, its walls decorated with trophies from 47 defeated worlds. Emperor Constantine Marcus sat on his throne, flanked by his generals and advisors, listening to Admiral Blackwood's report with growing disbelief. "You're telling me," the Emperor said slowly, "that a single human ship made our entire invasion fleet disappear?" "Not disappear, Your Majesty. Translated into parallel space. The crews are alive but unreachable." General Patricia Wells, the Emperor's chief military advisor, studied the sensor recordings from the battle. "These readings are beyond our understanding. The energy output alone should have been impossible for any single vessel." "Because it wasn't just one ship," Blackwood explained. "The entire planet Earth is a fortress. What we thought were primitive cities were actually camouflaged defensive systems more advanced than anything in our empire." Emperor Constantine stood and walked to the great window that showed his capital city stretching to the horizon. "If this is true, then everything we know about human history is wrong." "Yes, Your Majesty. According to Captain Harrison, humans are the original spacefaring race in this galaxy. They seeded life on thousands of worlds, including our own. We are, in a very real sense, their children." The throne room fell silent. The implications were staggering. Every world the Empire had conquered, every species they had enslaved, every victory they had celebrated, all of it had been possible only because humanity had allowed it. 3 days later, the first message arrived from Earth. It was broadcast simultaneously to every world in the galaxy, reaching Imperial colonies, independent systems, and even the most remote trading posts. Dr. Rebecca Stone appeared on countless screens across known space, her image clear and her voice carrying easily across the vast distances between stars. She sat in what appeared to be a simple office, but the technology visible behind her was clearly far beyond anything most species possessed. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, "my name is Rebecca Stone, and I speak for the Terran sovereignty. 3 days ago, an Imperial fleet attacked our solar system. We were forced to demonstrate why such aggression will no longer be tolerated." The message continued with footage of the dimensional translation, showing the Imperial fleet fading into parallel space in a matter of seconds. The demonstration was broadcast without commentary, allowing viewers to draw their own conclusions about humanity's true capabilities. "For millennia, we have watched from our sanctuary world as the younger races learned to walk among the stars. We guided you when you needed guidance, then stepped back to let you find your own paths. But recent events have shown us that our period of isolation must end." On worlds across the galaxy, billions of people watched in stunned silence as their understanding of the universe changed forever. "The age of conquest is over," Dr. Stone announced. "No species will be permitted to enslave another. No world will be allowed to threaten peaceful civilizations. We are resuming our role as guardians of galactic civilization." The message ended with coordinates for diplomatic contact and an invitation for all species to send representatives to Earth for a great council. Within hours of the broadcast, something unprecedented happened. Wars that had raged for decades suddenly stopped. The Centauri Republic and the Vegan Collective, who had been fighting over territory for 50 years, declared an immediate ceasefire. The Andromedan Mining Consortium released all their slave workers. Even the notorious Tau Ceti pirates surrendered to the nearest authorities. Fear was part of it, certainly. No one wanted to face the same fate as the Imperial fleet. But there was something else too: hope. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy had unified leadership that promised peace instead of conquest. Emperor Constantine received the first returned Imperial crews 2 weeks later. The 9,700 ships materialized in Imperial space exactly as they had disappeared, their crews unharmed but profoundly changed by their experience. Admiral Sarah Parker, commander of the battleship Iron Fist, met with the Emperor personally. "Your Majesty, they showed us things while we were in parallel space. The history of our species, the truth about how life spread through the galaxy. We saw recordings of our own ancestors being taught agriculture, mathematics, space travel. Everything we are, we owe to them." The Emperor listened to report after report from returning officers. None spoke of anger or desire for revenge. Instead, they talked about understanding, about seeing their place in a larger cosmic family. Captain Thomas Harrison's silver ship appeared above New Rome without warning, simply materializing in orbit as if it had always been there. His message to the Emperor was brief and direct. "Your crews have been returned safely, along with their ships. Their weapons systems have been permanently modified, they can defend but cannot attack civilian targets. Consider this a graduation gift as your empire learns to become something better." As ships from dozens of worlds began arriving at Earth for the promised council, Admiral Blackwood stood in his quarters looking out at the stars. The galaxy was changing, becoming something it had never been before, truly united under the guidance of its oldest children. The age of conquest was over. The age of cooperation had begun.